Today I'm going to be working on a 2003 Hyundai Sonata with the V6. And to start things off, we want to disconnect the negative battery cable. That's a 10 millimeter. Take that off. And then we want to come over here and we want to remove there's four bolts holding this cover on. 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to take the oil cap off right here. So it'll sit right here. Take the oil cap off, remove that, put this back on so nothing gets in there, move this out of the way, and then that's going to start us off. And we want to take off the tire also. That's, in this particular case, it's we'll just take off the cover. Those are 21 millimeter nuts. The crankshaft pulley bolt's going to be, I believe, a 22 millimeter. And from there, what we're going to do is we're going to have to take off the belt, which is we'll just use a 3/8 drive to go right down here on this tensioner, the holes right here. And then we're going to go, you're going to turn it clockwise. So you would turn your wrench to go as if you're putting a nut on clockwise, and then you could take off the belt. From there the belt will slide off, and then what I'm gonna do is crack the bolt off the camshaft or crankshaft pulley bolt, 22 millimeter, and that'll get us started. Let me do that, and then I'll get back to you. We're gonna end up having to take this power steering pump off. We're going to end up having to take this off. So these are, we're going to be using today 10 millimeter, 12 millimeter, 14 millimeter, 17 millimeter for these. I think these are all 17 millimeter. And then before we remove these, we're going to have to lift up the engine from below, put a jack with a piece of wood to support the oil pan, and we'll get that started. So I'm going to take off the tire, show the crankshaft pulley bolt removal, and that'll get us started for now. Alright, so what I've done next is to get to the pulley, which is, actually I'll show you, to get to this pulley right here you see on the floor, I had it's easier to take the power steering pump off. Those are 12 millimeter, by the way, there's two of them. But before I took this off, I loosened the belt. It goes into here, 3/8 drive. You push it downwards this way, going that way, and that loosens it, and you're able to get the belt off of one of the pulleys. But the belt won't come all the way out until you pull this thing out, the tensioner. So what I did is, well, I went down there, I cracked this open, 22 millimeter. This thing gave me a little bit of a problem to take off. It's supposed to just pull right off. I grabbed both hands, I put one here and one here, and I wiggled it back and forth. Then I tried the pry bars, wiggled it back and forth. It was giving me a hard time, so I had this guy help me, and he came from the top and he hit it with the back of a pry bar. And as soon as he started hitting it and I was wiggling it, it came right off. Sorry for the wind. This thing right here, you can see where the bolt goes here. You can see the locations for the bolt right here. You have a location here and a location here. And those are the bolts right there, those two. Right there. And those, I believe, are also, well, I'll let you know. I think they're 14 millimeter. So you have it there, and there, that's the mount, and you access it through here. This goes, you get the access from these holes right here. It's a little difficult to get to this one. You know, it's not too bad. I used a deep well 14 millimeter socket with just a ratchet, 3/8 inch drive ratchet. Had no problem taking that off. I did have a little bit of problem taking off the pulley. Like I said, I came right here. I got the pry bar right here, just hitting on the back of I had somebody come up from the top and they were hitting down on the pulley while I was pulling it with my hands, and I had no problem coming off. What was restricting it really was just this little pin right here, and that's it. It's just kind of like a roll pin. But so if you're having trouble taking this off, grab a hand down here on each side, have somebody go through the top and hit it with the soft end of a piece of wood or hammer or anything like that. Then the next thing we're gonna do, I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna go underneath the engine. By the way, I have this just hanging to the side, bungee tied. This thing right here pops right out of this little bracket, and you just pull it straight up and it pops right out. So you want to do that so you have more slack right over here. Get this bungee tied out of the way. You could put it on this other side over here, but I like to put it over here. It's just kind of more out of my way this way. Sorry for the wind. And what we're going to do next is we're going to take these 3 bolts off, but before we do that, we're going to go under the engine, under the oil pan, put a piece of wood between the jack and the oil pan, and give it just a little bit of support. Break this one loose, 17 millimeter, break this one loose, 17 millimeter, break this one loose, 17 millimeter. Come over here, break this one loose, 17 millimeter, and this will be able to take this piece off. And then after I take this piece off, there's another piece right here. There's another piece right there that I'm gonna have to take off. I'm gonna grab a flashlight next time. You can see up here, but when I get down there, I'll bring a flashlight so we could take a look at what I'm doing. After I do that, I'm gonna start taking this cover off. 10 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 10 millimeter right here, 10 millimeter right here. Should be another one and another one right there. Right there, I'm pointing to it. On the camera, it looks like I'm pointing to it right there. And then that cover should come off. And then after I do that, I'm going to put the bolt back on. Well, actually, I'll take off the lower cover too. I'll go to the lower end, take off the lower cover. Then I'll put the bolt back in, turn the engine over to make sure the timing's right, mark the timing belt, and then we'll take the timing belt off. And I'll show that. I'll use some lighting for next time. All right. Let me remove this. Like I said, first go under the vehicle, support it with the wood just a little bit. You don't want to go too hard, just to relieve a little bit of pressure, because this is supporting the side of the engine. So I'm gonna do that. Support it from below. Take this off. Take this off. Take this off. Take this one off right here. This piece will come off after I do that. If I could take the cover off, top cover, I'll take the top cover off. I'm gonna do that now. Alright, so we got the cover off, which was I'll show you right now. I took this piece off. Yeah, the 1, 2, 3. Took this one off, put it back in here. It's also 17 millimeter. Those are all 17 millimeters. And then we took off the top cover. 1, 2, 3. This one right in the center is the long one. It's the only one that's the long one. So I kept it there with that. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's it. And it's good we're doing the timing belt for this thing, because I went to go take this off. This one right here. So I went to take this pulley off right here, and that 17 millimeter bolt, I turned it off with my hand. There's a washer back there. Oh, shit. Careful you don't lose that. Gonna make sure that's there. Don't lose that. That's the way it was, like that. There's another one right there. You can feel this, make sure it's not feeling bad. I went down there to put a wrench on it, and I just turned it by hand. So this thing was, I'll probably put some Loctite on it, some blue Loctite, just to keep it from doing that again. But I mean, it was just turning by hand. So if this would have came off, it would have, the belt would have flew off, and then You would have lost the serpentine belt, would have lost the alternator and power steering. So your alternator would go out, power steering would go out, and your car would probably die within a couple of minutes, because it's supposed to have an alternator to run the electronics. Now, looking at this belt though, I think it has somewhere around 70,000 miles, but it has like 6 years on it. You could tell it's due. I believe this is an interference engine, but yeah, I think we all know what happens when a timing belt breaks. Your valves can stay open, and since your crank is still rotating, the pistons go up and hit the open valve, bending valves, doing a lot of damage. It could actually destroy your engine, at least the heads, if not. So that's why we do timing belts, and that's why we're doing this one. Right down there you can see the water pump that we're gonna have to get to. And what I've used so far is just 10mm, 12mm, 14mm, and 17mm. The 21mm to take off the tire, and the 22mm to take off the crank pulley bolt. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take this lower cover off, and then after we take the lower, there's probably like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5 or 6 10mm headed bolts that we're gonna take off. Then take off this lower cover, and then we're gonna have to take this off. And I believe there's a bolt down here. Yeah, I feel it. So there's a bolt down here. You could feel it if you put your hand. If you put your hand right here, right where the dipstick is, in front of the dipstick. Actually, that is the dipstick. It's connected to the dipstick. Right here, dipstick. There's a bolt down there. So you just follow the dipstick down, and right at the end of the dipstick there's a bolt. I believe it's a 14 or 12mm. We'll take that off, and there's a couple bolts down here I could film. There's one down here. Actually, I'll go down there and show you, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, there's one of them right there. Yeah, that's where the dipstick is. So yeah, there's at least one right there. There might be another one up here. And then the one that connects to the oil, just to show you where we're at. Right here. Trying to get some light in here. That's a bolt right there. It's kind of dark. I'm trying to shine some light. There it is. And then, so we'll take those off. We'll also take these, see, there's one bolt there, one bolt there, one bolt there, one bolt right there, and, oh yeah, there's the other bolt. Yeah, so there's one, and there's another one up in that crevice. So you got that one, and that one, and the one coming through the side right through that dipstick. There's the dipstick coming down through the side. I believe those are 14mm. We'll take those off. We'll take off the cover, and then we'll set it at top dead center. And then we could loosen this thing, and now loosen the tension off of the timing belt. And so let's do that. So we got the lower cover off. We got this bracket off. And there's a bolt that kind of goes in here. It's hard to see, but it's right under here. Usually, and I'll show you on the part of the motor mount. So let's see. You got this one right here. This one right here. This one right here. You also, those are 14mm headed, so you got 1, 2, 3, and and this is where that motor mount is, right? And you have this one right here. This is the one I was talking about right now that's under the camshaft sprocket. It's a 12 millimeter, not a 14. These are 14. And also you have one right here, which is right there, that is connecting the dipstick right there, and that's also 12 millimeter. I just got in there with the small extension. So these are all the same size. That one, that one, and that one. And that's 14, 14, 14. This is 12. This is the one that's kind of hard to see, but you can see it where it is really on this unit. And this is the other one. That's a 12 millimeter. So you got 5 total to take this one piece off. All right, now let me get my little, I got a little pick here. So don't worry about those blue lines right now. This thing right here, it's hard to see. Maybe my pick is too. Okay, so this part of the block right here, which is kind of dirty, it's a little nub here. It's a part of the block. And this piece that's on the crank sprocket, those have to line up. Right there, and right there, right there, right there. I just put this blue mark because I'm going to put it on the new belt. While it's off, while I take both of them, while I take this old one off, I'm going to put those marks onto the new one, just to make sure it lines up properly. Give me a little bit of a witness. I really don't need to be doing that, but it just helps me visually. And also, they already had it painted white. They already had it painted white, but I just put a mark there, just so, like I said, visual. I'm also going to paint these new marks on the new belt, and there's also an indentation right here. I just colored them, so you got an indentation here, you got an indentation here, and you got an indentation here, and you got one right here. And I'm going to put those new marks on the, I'm going to put these marks on the new timing belt, and then so when I put it on, I'll make sure I got it perfect. So and here's the water pump right here. So what I'm going to do to take this off is this tensioner right here. This tensioner. I'll take these two off right here. This one and this one. And that's going to relieve tension off of here. Because that, off of this unit right here. See how that's pushing it up, the plunger pushing this up to put tension on the belt. So as soon as I take this bolt and this bolt, which look like, I don't know, 12 millimeter, then it's going to relieve pressure, tension. Then I'm going to take off, you don't have to take off that bolt right there. That's what I'm looking at right now. Just take off that one. And be careful, there's a washer behind there, so don't lose that washer. So I'm going to do that right now. Since I already got my timing marks all lined up and everything, I could take off the belt now. And in order to take the belt off, I'm going to take those two bolts off of the tensioner, relieve pressure from the belt, take the belt off, and also take off that pulley, which I got new ones in the kit, so I got to take it off. Alright. I'm also going to do the water pump, so I'm going to be looking at the new water pump, see how many bolts, holes it has, and then take those off. And I'll show that to you. So that's what I'm going to do. Make sure you get your timing marks lined up and everything. So right now, right now we're just, I took off the water pump. I had to take off a bolt here and a bolt here, 10 millimeter headed. They are right there. Right there, those two right there. It gave me space enough to get this thing out of the way a little bit, and then I'm just using some really fine wet dry grit sandpaper. It's really fine. It's probably like 300-400 grit or something like that. I'm just getting off this little bit of stuff right here. You don't go crazy with it. Use a razor blade, and razor blade's made out of metal, and this stuff's made out of aluminum. So I just sand it down until it's a little bit smooth. for a good surface material. And then what I'm going to do is I like to put a little bit of silicone on the new gasket on the water pump, just to keep the gasket to stick to the new water pump. And then after I put the water pump down, I'm going to torque it down. It's probably only about 15 foot-pounds. I'm not sure. Check your repair manual for the specifications on how much you got to torque it down to, or look it up somewhere. But you probably want to, this is one of the things that you're probably going to want to torque down is the water pump. I'll probably look up the specs, but it's got to be, it can't be more than 20 foot-pounds. That's into an aluminum head. So that's what we're going to do. And then I'm going to put the water pump back, and the pulleys that you took off. I took off these two pulleys right here. Those are going to be going right back after I put the water pump. Put the water pump on, and what I'll do after I put the water pump on is I'll fill it back with coolant. And I actually have a pressure gauge. I could pressurize the system, and I'll just see if it's leaking, because if it's leaking after you put everything back together, then you're going to have to rip everything back apart. So it's good for me to test to see if it's sealing. And the way I do that is I just pressurize the system using my my little pump. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do the surface real quick, clean it up, put the new water pump, wipe this down with a rag, put the new water pump after I put the gasket on the water pump, using a little bit of silicone just to hold it into place. Small amount, real small amount, just enough to keep it onto it so it doesn't shift or move. Put it on, torque it down to specs, torque them all down to specs. And by the way, the different bolts for these, they're different sizes. So you're gonna have to keep track of what's coming out of where. And you can tell with the new water pump, really, the different sizes. You can see, let me see, sorry. You can see on this new water pump right here that this right here is thicker and longer than this area right here, and this is where the thicker, longer bolts came out of. So just keep track of where you came out of in order to put them back proper. And you want to torque down the bolts in a crisscross pattern. Probably doesn't really matter, but you want to do it just little by little. Make sure it's sitting in there properly. Give it a couple minutes to dry. I'll put more coolant. I'll pressurize the system at that time. As long as there's no leaks, then I'll start putting everything back. And I'll probably just get to the point where I put the timing belt, and I'll probably just crank over the engine, start it just to make sure it's running properly, and I'll show you that, and then we'll be done with this job. Not hard at all. The hardest part pretty much was just probably taking off that crankshaft pulley, and that wasn't that hard. I just hit it a couple of times. So all right, so what you want to do is start it from the bottom. Make sure the lines are lined up, which I'll do right now. Let me see. So you see they're lined up. That notch with that backing. And then I shove this down in here just to hold it up there. And then, because the tensioner is on the left side, tensioner goes right here. You want to pull all the slack this way. Try without moving the crankshaft. Come up along here, make sure this is all lined up properly, and then come down and pull it down here, over here, over here. Now, one key step to do that I didn't mess up, I was just getting the timing off a little bit, is this pulley right here, the pulley that goes with the tensioner. Put this first, and yeah, I put the tensioner, let me get it. I put this thing, well, you see I gotta collapse it again. I put this thing on there first, and the little bit of tension that it gives, it makes the belt harder to put on. So put the belt on before you do that. And so yeah, put the belt on first. But here's one thing with this timing. The reason this has popped out is brand new is because I did it. I turned it over by hand, and on the back over here it was one tooth back that way. And the problem that I was having was, you take up all the slack up here, you go down here, you go down here, you put it up here, and this is perfectly lined up. It's perfectly lined up. And then you put the belt on right here, and then when you go right here, and when you pull it on here, what happens is it pulls it back one tooth. So what you have to do is get a wrench, a 17 millimeter, turn this where you see this notch right here is literally one tooth to the right. Just one tooth. Just one tooth to the right. And then when you put the belt, it's going to look like it's off, but as soon as you put the tensioner down here and pull it, it pulls it back that one tooth. So that's why I had to take the tensioner back off to do it again. That's why we rotate it by hand to make sure the timing marks are dead on. So I'm just going to put this, I'm going to collapse this back down, put the pin back in, reinstall this, and then rotate the engine a total of 720 degrees down there, which is going to do one full rotation up here, and then double check all the timing markers as long as they're good. The people who own this car took the key, so I can't start it, or else I would start it. I had already pressure checked the system. There was no leaks, no coolant leaks or anything like that. And so I'm just gonna wrap it up and put everything back exactly the way that I took it apart. So I guess one thing about this job is this little cover right here. There's two bolts right here and right here that you have to loosen, that are 10 millimeter headed bolts that you have to loosen in order to get this water pump underneath it. So I would suggest what I use is just some black silicone to I just use a little bit of black silicone on the gasket for the water pump just to hold it in place so it doesn't move around. Let it dry for 5 minutes, and then put it on here, tighten it down, check your torque specs for the water pump. That's aluminum. So check your torque specs on that. You could probably just find it online somewhere. And the main thing about this job, you will mess this timing up, is put this one tooth, just one tooth this way, and then wrap the belt around it. And then once you pull the tension off, you start pulling the tension off this way, it's going to pull it back that one tooth. So that, like I said, after you're done doing that, put the crank pulley back on. If you put the crank pulley bolt with the washer smushes this. So you're going to have to actually put the crank pulley back on and then rotate it 720 degrees down at the crank. So everything's going to go back exactly the way we took it apart. So I guess the last scene will be starting the vehicle and running it. And I gotta fix a code on this. I already know what it is, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Well, I'll have the last part where it's running. All right. So here's the car. What I do with the belt, what I do is I draw, and you can probably just look it online or whatever, but basically just a simple diagram like that, timing belt. If you've done it 10 times before, then it doesn't matter, but just a simple, it saves you time, because I just draw a simple diagram like that because it was giving me a pain in the butt, and I just grabbed this, I forgot I had it. So everything's put back together. Make sure you put the power steering pump correctly. It kind of gave me a little bit of a headache because the bolt on the bottom wasn't working all that great. Everything's all put back. Once you put these bolts through, I start this bolt first, this one down there. I start this one first. Once I start that one, I had to lift it up a little bit from the bottom with the jack. I put those on. Once I was done with those two, tighten them down. Those got to be at least 60, 75 foot-pounds. I just tighten it down real nice and tight. And then double check everything. Double check that your belt's on correctly. Double check that the belt is seated properly onto all your different pulleys, and give it a start and make sure it runs properly. I already done that when I had all the covers and everything else off, but here it is. Well, sounds good, runs good, no problems. We're going to bleed out the system. You want to refill the system. And then there's different ways you can do it. You can let it run for a while, fill it up, let it run for a while, and once it cools down, you can refill it, or you can leave the cap off. They have Lyle, tool manufacturer. They make a kit that goes directly on there. There's different things you can use to bleed the system, but you know, if you don't really have nothing, you could just fill it. You could just fill it and then get it nice and hot. And then once the thermostat opens, go ahead and turn your heater on also on the inside. Turn the fan on low and just turn your heater function on. That's going to get the liquid flowing all the way through your heater. And then that hopefully will get all the bubbles up to the top. And then you just refill it once it cools down. But make sure you let the car cool down before you refill it, because it'll be hot. So anyways, thanks for watching. Comment, rate, and subscribe.